formally then to the final panel discussion for today. And I'm so excited about this panel discussion because, well, I think for John, it's the first time that he's joining us for this conference, but the rest of you've been at this conference for on at least 2 occasions. I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about the fact that Terry's here with us because I first met Terry over 20 years ago when he was teaching in London. So that, for me is an excellent example of emergence, when you make these connections and then far into the future, you just don't know how you're going to reconnect and how you're going to make an impact on each other. So it's very, very exciting. And I'm really grateful that you've all stayed with me and carry on supporting these conversations and these discussions. I think the discussions are even more powerful than conversations because you just don't know who's going to say what and how that's going to have an impact on what you're going to say next. So maybe if I could start with yourself, Terry, if you could introduce yourself and just briefly say what presence, emergence and impact mean to you, then I'll ask the others to say the same thing, to just talk about what it means to each one of you in your work, and then we will comment on what other people have said. So could we start with yourself, Terry?
Okay, well, let me get present. The rate of change has accelerated, and the change and the disruption and the uncertainty and all of that. And I've found the only solution that's acceptable is to be present. So I'm using all of this external stimulus to just be now, here. And this is an old teaching, one that I've brought into my work, but to actually apply it for more frequently and for longer periods. So ideally, it would be the 24 hours a day, and that's a huge challenge. However, every issue, every problem, every uncertainty, all of the negative things in my life are never here. Right now, they're never here. They're always in the past and the future, always. And if that's true, and it is, in my experience, then how can I be here? Just stay here. And that's where that's where everything is. So on one level, it's very exciting. On another level, it's quite challenging. I consider I'm better at this. At least I have the tools and the information more than most people, and yet I still find it very challenging. And I've also found I don't want to do it alone. So I thank you for bringing groups like this together. I don't know if I could do it alone, but I also think it would be stupid if I attempted to do it alone. And not that I'm not stupid at times, but I don't want to do that consciously. So this is support of emergence. Just that the focus, one of my main teachers is teaching is where I look is where I go. What I focus on is what I then experience, manifest, and I call reality or real. But it all starts with where my focus is. So just that you have put a focus on emergence and presence here it is. I could go on, but I recognize we have short time and many people.
Terry, no, excellent. That's a great start. So John, your perspective, and please, John.
So I look at this from the perspective of someone who's been working in the business, creativity, and innovation field for about 30 years. We look out the window and we see disruption, and to call the times disrupted and uncertain is almost a truism, I think, at this point. I tend to look at our current challenges one click up and look at this as the era of discontinuity. Disruption means that there's turbulence. If you want to use a nautical metaphor, the seas are high, so you have to have better seapersonship, and you have to be more agile, and you have to have other proficiencies. But if you are in an era of discontinuity, that's sort of like being a mariner in the 17th century who got a map that said beyond here lie monsters, which is what happened to Vasco da Gama when he set out to find pepper. He didn't know where he was going to wind up, and there was a profound discontinuity between what he knew, which was the map of the known world, and everything else. And yet there was this desire to come to a fabled far shore where pepper, which was at the time the most valuable commodity in the world, would assure his fortune and the fortune of the Portuguese nation or empire at that time. So discontinuity is a different problem set, because when you confront the unknown at that level, you need to have the ability to be present in order to allow something new to emerge, which is where the two terms become linked. And we live in a highly distracted era where we're surrounded by digital technology that has good aspects, but also has been engineered to kind of take us out of ourselves and to pay attention to things that are outside of ourselves. We have the amplification of assertions unmoored by facts and evidence. We have, in essence, a lot of problems and challenges staying centered and staying present. And if we're not able to do that, then we're not able to enable something fundamentally new to emerge, which will have impact in the sense of allowing us to bridge this discontinuity and to invent the new sources of value before it's too late.
Okay, thanks very much, John. Jasmine? Jasmine, are you still there?
Hi, good evening. Yes, no, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Me? Cool. Nice to meet you all. Okay, for me, as an artist and once a scientist and an educator, I guess being an artist, you're forced to look. One of the things that artists, first of all, I imagine that artists, well, I like to imagine that we're prophets of the future. We can take an awful lot of seemingly unrelated things and find connections. And also, just as a draftswoman, the ability to really look at things is something that you learn as an artist. And in order to solve any problem, you need to establish what that problem is. So in terms of presence, I was listening. I've noticed, particularly during quarantine, people have been picking up their pencils, their papers, their brushes. They have been getting active. They have been creating things. And the other thing that I've noticed is that all of a sudden, because they couldn't find internal space, they were starting to appreciate their environment. So in terms of presence, I think this is, I mean, it is a pivotal point, as you know, the other two have pointed out. In terms of emergence, when we have groups like this, or when we start to collaborate again with seemingly very, very different people, I think artists have the ability to find the commonality in language. Because I think one of the major problems that we have is, one, things are not personal. You need something to be personal. For me, it was the fact that my son had a major asthma attack 4 years ago, at which point I started to question the sort of the cleanliness of the air, and the fact that breathing is no longer a human right throughout many parts of the world, as some of you are experiencing on the West Coast. And I found that appalling. I thought, there's no point having all this brilliant technology and biotech and AI if you can't breathe and you can't get some clean water. So in terms of emergence, I then started to work with materials that I'd never worked with before that weren't actually designed for art. They were designed as insulators. They were designed to, one of them is a geopolymer, and one of the side effects is that it absorbs pollution from the air. So this sort of emergence of collaboration and the impact that it's having has now, for me, become incredibly exciting, because just installed one sculpture at the Horniman Museum, which is a museum in South London, because we also know that pollution doesn't just affect people, but it affects animals and insects. And bees cannot find their way to their pollinating flowers. And as we know, 1 in every 3 mouthfuls of food is because of bees. So if we don't look up after, you know, the most delicate sort of ecosystem right at the base. So what, again, I've experienced during quarantine is that people are now prepared to listen to me. You know, sometimes you feel as if you're banging your head against a wall. And this I find incredibly promising. So I guess presence, artists looking at things, emergence, trying to get a common language, and impact, trying to create work that really actually makes a difference. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Jasmine. So let's go on to the next another artist, Susan.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So I think our impact is dependent upon how present we are. And I think what we've found during the last few months is that we're very present. We don't, we might still have a lot of distraction, a lot of squirrel kind of moments, if you're a fan of the movie Up. I have a lot of those the older I get. But I find that I'm more impactful the more I'm aware of my here and now. And so I think we are, as artists, often ahead of our time. And I find we're, if there are alternating timelines in the scientific world, I don't know that there are, but if there are, I sometimes feel like I'm out of my timeline, like maybe I'm ahead or I've missed something and I'm way behind. But I think during these last few months, I have felt very grounded and present. And I find that my impact is a little bit more because of that. I'm not sure all of the factors, but I do know that there's a commonality between emergence, presence, and impact. I definitely see the correlation. I think it's an excellent insight on your part, Jasmine, to put these three together for the conference.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. And Kathleen?
Hi. Yeah, I love those three aspects. I agree. Those together, that seems a very much perfect time because I mean, my own work more recently has been more and more about connecting or co-creation and creativity background as a designer. And so first of all, you know, working for Conrad Design Group for about a decade, and then later being an academic, and then now sort of working as an artist, sort of, and working in community, social enterprise, I know what I would call myself. I think a soul is good, but also feel very intentional. I mean, actually, as the other artists, sometimes I feel like I'm almost in a different timeline. I get a lot of dreams that are very much about the future and technologies. And actually, when I was a designer, I was very often, I used to dream things as well. I mean, I still am a designer, but I'm not working sort of in product in the way that I was before. Or it's funny because when I worked for Terence, who's recently passed on, I was working on a lot of multidisciplinary design, and now I feel that at this time more like multidimensional. I become a multidimensional being, and so, you know, for me the kind of primary factor at the moment is to do with this being present in a way that is moment to moment. It's, you know, moment to moment creativity. We just don't know what's going to happen. And I think I said in my talk before when we were chatting that the most, for me, it's like what's in the way is the way at the moment. So every day I somehow trying to keep within that presence. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not successful, but I am aware of my presence and my consciousness. I think that sort of journey that flips from the outside into the internal has been sort of accelerated, certainly for me. And it's been really interesting watching that on the world stage as well. More and more people turning inwards, looking at their values individually, but also globally, because a lot of things that really needed to be addressed are being addressed at the moment in terms of their own society. So that's where I sort of feel within those sort of that aspect. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Kath. And Glen.
Yeah, okay. I'm a healer at the moment, healing myself. Tell you I've got cancer, terminal, but it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's not terminal. I'm involved in shamanic healing, angelic Reiki healing, and counseling. So I'm applying all those things to myself. But I'm actually looking at the three words and turning it the other way around. In other words, first of all, impact, then the emergence, and then you find your presence. So you know, one of the things that came up is the dark night of the soul. You know, what do we go through when we're going through the dark night of the soul? We're facing things that we've never faced before, and we're facing them at a really critical point where they're intense and they are deeply impacting. And I think the word which summarizes all of those three is authenticity. What do we do when we plunge into the inner self, into the real person? We find our authentic self. I like Viktor Frankl, who says, you know, he wrote that book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he says there, only those who made it through were those who had something significant yet to do. And maybe this is what's happening with our current situation. We're finding out what our significance is. If we don't find that out, we have no drive. So that authenticity. So going through the impact of what, you know, just my particular stage, but so many of us are going through this enormous impact, which is creating turbulence. And the dark night of the soul, people are asking themselves those questions. They don't know what is real. They've lost. And that process that makes us dig deep within, and then emerges from that the real person, the who you really are. And what is this all about? So you find that out by digging deeply. And from that emerges this human being that we are, this incredible human being. And then we have an impact on all of those people around us, because they say, wow, if you're dealing with that, then I can deal with what I'm dealing with too. And so I think that healing is such a powerful thing, being connected with the inner self, with God, or whatever you like to call that inner self that we're connected with. So authenticity maybe, you know, combines all those three. So lovely to be with all of you searching people going through this journey. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Sandra?
Yeah, it's really kind of beautiful to me, these three words, when I was thinking about them in their relationship to creativity. What kind of flew out for me is that they are almost like a roadmap. It's almost the opposite of what Glenn said. You know, Glenn said they were like in reverse order, and they really coalesced to me in just the order that they are in relationship to creativity, because I think that as human beings, we have a fundamental responsibility as human beings, or as some say, as spiritual beings having a human experience, to be present, to emerge as whatever we are trying to emerge as, and to also be conscious of the emergent possibilities, and through that to impact. That we have a responsibility to consciously create and consciously impact. And I think if we're conscious creators, you know, whatever creativity is defined as in any circumstance, if we're consciously creating, then we're creating on purpose. And I love that phrase, because to me that means both creating intentionally and creating in alignment with whatever the sacred reason is that we came here in the first place. And in my work, I say that I work at the intersection of creative imagination, personal responsibility, and inspired action. And I just believe so deeply, after all my years I started out as a creative artist, and 35 years as a professional theater director and an educator and a professor, and have worked with people of all ages and abilities, and people that are not supposed to be brilliant or not supposed to have their own creative genius because they maybe are nonverbal or whatever their circumstance is. And what I have found to a person is that everyone has their own unique brilliance, their own unique genius, their own unique creative genius, and we just codify what that creativity is so tightly that we end up excluding the genius from being offered. And I think that everyone's responsibility is to do the most they can to impact the situation. Whatever our genius is, it is definitely not to sit around and discuss who else is going to fix it for us, you know, or to sit around and discuss what somebody else has created and whether or not it has viability. I think that in a situation particularly like this, if we can accept that nothing happens to us, it happens for us, and then what are we going to do about it? That is really where I think creativity and innovation and invention come from in a time like this, and in all times. And through that, if we can stay present and stay true, stay authentic to what our purpose is, then we're going to create something totally uniquely us. So
yeah, and I suppose sometimes when people get really busy, they're focusing so much on what they're doing rather than who they're being.
Yeah, and what somebody else is doing, and whether or not somebody else is doing enough for us or doing their job right. You know, I think we're so engaged right now in criticizing and looking critically at others that we don't take that time to be present with ourselves and recognize what's our responsibility here. What's the action that we can take to create?
Mm-hmm. Who else has comments on anything that anybody said?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that, Sandra. I think that, you know, it's so, you know, it's a unique situation. And, you know, if you have the mindset that this is an opportunity, something that each of us has a unique talent to offer something, and to use the imagination about what does this offer us? You know, I always look at something as a gift, you know, no matter how horrible or how difficult it is, it's a gift. And when we look at it like that, we say, what's in the gift? You know, what is this present giving us? You know, and each of us, of course, has an individual talent. So how can we use this unique situation to create us in a bigger way?
Yeah.
I love what you said earlier, Glenn, about you being terminal. I think that, you know, we're all terminal. You know, the moment we're born, we're dying in essence. But what happens in that growth is that we see these different cycles. And so I wonder how we would live if we all felt that we had a terminal diagnosis. I think things become very clear to us, what's important, how we spend our time, what our responsibilities are. And so I think we should all sort of live as though we're terminal, because we really are. It's just that maybe there's more of a date assigned in some instances than others. But I think, I wonder maybe how you've changed as a result of that diagnosis.
Much more focused, I think. Yeah. And in fact, isn't there a phrase that all the mystics always say, you should live as though death is sitting beside you, or something like that?
I don't know if you remember, Jasvir, but I had a process in the leadership training you did with me where I would take people to the end of their life and look back, and then make significant choices from there.
Yeah, I do remember.
So yeah, no, I've used it over and over again, and it's the most powerful way I've found, you know, because I don't want to look back with regrets, and there's a clarity from the end that I don't have right in the midst of it. I've been thinking about your word emergence, and for something to emerge, it had to have already been present, like a seed. It's already there. You know, it's from whatever the higher source is, or the cosmic oversoul, or God, or whatever name, it's already there. And if I can do my part to nurture it, provide whatever it needs to grow and emerge and express. I know the best work I've done over the years was not what I've planned. It was never. I did a seminar in Moscow one time, and I thought I was doing 3 hours, and there were 15,000 people. It was in a stadium. And a half an hour before I went on stage, they told me, you're doing 3 days. And so there was something in the translation that I heard hours and it was days. So nothing planned. It was probably the best work I've done. And I would say it emerged out of not here. It just came out of, you know, the heart, or whatever you want to call that. And so ever since then, it's been my goal to connect there and do my work from whatever that is, because it's a lot wiser and more profound than I can ever be with my learned beliefs and behaviors and all that. So
you're tapping into that unknown wisdom. You know, you're tapping into the power of your unconscious and all of that wisdom that not everyone has easy access to, unless we're.
I think it's available to everybody. We're just not taught to go there or to give it priority, or how to do it. And it's not hard. I mean, I know the tricks, but I forget. I don't do it as often as would be helpful, you know. Yeah. But meditation is a big part of it. Just quiet time. Get out in nature. Be alone once in a while, more often.
Yeah, I totally agree that the qualities that you're talking about, and I mean, that's also something that, I mean, those of us who have the luxury of being able to step out into nature, which I am fortunate enough to be able to do this. And I feel like when you're in the cities, it's like that's an extra challenge for people at this time. But I mean, present meditation, I do qigong as well, which helps me sort of bring physical and spiritual together. But also having that sort of shift of focus each day brings into balance. But I think there's something that you're saying about that kind of looking at the end of your life as well, like in taking, you know, they're talking about going to the end of our lives, and actually kind of, if we live our lives like there is an urgency, like our lives are actually really important, and everybody's life is in some, it brings that into consciousness. One of it makes our lives much more important each day, and you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Sorry, Kath, I'm getting the message that your bandwidth is low, so it's breaking up a little bit. So as we only have a few minutes left, let me see if John hasn't said anything for a while. John, do you have any other comments about anything that people have said?
Well, sure. I mean, first of all, with regard to emergence, I think about jazz musicians. You know, jazz musicians will typically say that they're not the, you know, ego-driven performer that's playing brilliant piano, but that they're really being a clear channel for something to emerge and be communicated through them. So there's a kind of a humility associated with that. Although, by the same token, jazz isn't just playing whatever you feel like playing and just coming up with random bits of music. It typically requires years or decades of training and preparation and so forth and so on. And I think that the popular misconceptions around creativity as being the lightning bolt or the eureka moment have to be balanced out against the you know, the rigor that's associated with creativity as well. So it's a place of balance, I think. The other thing I was reflecting on as I listened to the conversation was this whole notion of presence in relation to the kind of people I deal with, who tend to be leaders of companies or, you know, people in government and so forth and so on. And the thing that I find almost as a theme is how disconnected they are from the realities of their situation. You know, they're either immersed in opinion, or they're, you know, infatuated with their expertise, or, you know, they have a vested interest in seeing things in a certain way. And therefore it's very difficult for them to interact with other people who share a very different opinion from them. And it's very difficult for them to set the stage for anything new to emerge, because they are in fact so opinionated. And, you know, of course, now we're in this era of fake news and this era of incredible, you know, division, whether you look at the UK or the US, two of the smartest societies that are, you know, at the moment behaving in not so smart ways. And I think part of this, you know, can be traced back to this whole challenge of presence, by which I would see the question of how do you actually get to the reality of your situation, you know, in a whether you call it a disrupted or a discontinuous environment. And So we know that meditation kind of clears our minds and polishes our perceptions, but how does that work at the level of a social, whether it's an organization or a society, so that, all of these great things that we've been talking about, like authenticity and purposefulness and, mutual respect and so forth, actually can get played out on a more collective level where, society itself, has a chance, hopefully to become a healthier and better construct.
Yeah. Okay, there's so much that I know that you're bursting to say, and I would love to hear more from you, but we are running out of time. So I just wanted to mention that we will continue to have these conversations. Next year, the theme is going to be synchronicity, serendipity, and synergy. Synergy, synchronicity, and serendipity. 3 integral concepts like presence, emergence, and impact. And what we're going to do is every Saturday at 10 o'clock and at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock for those of you from the US who might find this slot to be more convenient, and those in Australia will find the 10 o'clock slot to be more convenient. So every Saturday I'm going to have those spaces available for these conversations to continue. There's not going to be any need for commitment, that you don't have to be there every single Saturday. We can come and go like you would to a cafe. It's going to be that kind of emergent space, very casual, that all we bring to the table is our curiosity and our interest in learning from the others. And I have to thank Glen for this idea, because normally after the conference I usually have meetings once a month, but in my conversation with Glen, isn't that true, Glen? That suddenly I just thought, well, why don't we have it every week, to keep the momentum going? Because when we have all these creative people engaged in discussions like this, there's always so much to say and it stimulates so many ideas. So why not have it every week? But it's not going to be a commitment. None of us can make it every single week, but when we can, at least there will be that opportunity to finish off these conversations that have just started. And I'm sure you're all excited to hear more about what each one of you has started to discuss. Any
Indeed.
final comments before we get? I think we only have about 2 minutes left.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Jasmine,
for everybody else's presence.
and everybody.
Thank you, Jasmine. That's amazing what you bring together every year.
I'm so excited about you all meeting each other. You're all wonderful souls, and I know all of you, but maybe you don't know each other. And I'm excited about that you're, this may be the beginning of connections that you can strengthen in an emergent way. Who knows, what you could collaborate on. Especially those of you who are based in the US and you're facing similar issues then. And we in the UK are facing our own issues.
We all have each other's emails and stuff, don't we?
Yes, we
if
do.
we want to reach out.
LinkedIn, or everyone who's in this conversation, you're all on LinkedIn, so it's very easy for you to connect with each other. And I will send the Zoom links for those meetings that I talk about. So as I say, there is no commitment, but as and when you feel like, oh, I want to talk to those creative people that I met at the conference, at least you will know where to find them.
Fantastic.
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for organizing it.
Nice meeting everybody.
Same
Nice
here.
Likewise.
Virtually, maybe
Nice
it'll
to meet
be
you all.
in person one day. So.
Yes.
When you come to Cornwall, Terry.
We're actually
Come to
thinking
England.
we're thinking of moving there.
Close to Cornwall, Terry.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we're looking at a couple places in Cornwall and the Isle of Wight, which I know nothing about. It's just it keeps coming up. So
we have less smoke.
Yeah, there's a lot of other issues going on here I'm not liking. So never thought I'd want to leave the U.S., but right now I do. So.
Shame.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you again.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you all. Beautiful souls. Thank you.
Yeah.